Hey Art Nerds! Today we're taking a look at the Akashiya Sai Thin Line brush pens. These are interesting because unlike the regular Akashiya Sai, which I've reviewed over on the blog and I've done an art supply redemption on here on the channel, these are actually designed to be waterproof. So I'm really excited to put them to the test and take a look at them today. I picked these up in 2018, back when I went to Japan, to Osaka, to Kyoto, and to Tokyo. If you're interested in my art supply adventures in Japan, I will link down in the description below some of the awesome vlogs that we created while there. I have a single pin for 300 yen, and then I have the 5-pack for 1,500 yen, about $15 USD. I think I'm going to do a giveaway with the single pin and give you guys a chance to try it out as well. The 5-pack has 5 different colors, all in really beautiful, subtle hues. The colors in this 5-piece set are Hiwara Iro, Chitose Midori, Mizu Asagi, Seiboku, and Sumi Iro. So we have a sort of warm gray-red, a spring green, a muted spring green, a blue green, a gray, and then a black. And the caps can post on the back of the pens, although they don't include a clip. And what else is really interesting about these is that they have individual nylon bristles, but they're smaller than some of the other waterproof pens that I have in my collection. So you guys have seen me talk about and use several different colored brush pens, colored waterproof brush pens. So I'm really excited about these because I really love the Tambo Furenosuke pens. I use them a lot for colored line work, and these are much more to my color palette. We have beautiful muted colors that are going to add just a little bit of color so we're not just inking with black. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that I've reviewed Akashiya Sai brush pens before. I have kind of a hit or miss relationship with them. I've reviewed a few other Akashiya products that I've liked for the most part, but Akashiya has never made something that was just a standout stellar product, with the exception of the bamboo brush pen I used to use all the time. But I'm really excited about these because I love colored line arts. I love that we have individual nylon bristles, so they're going to handle more like a real brush, and I love that they use muted colors. So for our first test, we want to actually test if these are water and alcohol marker proof. So I'm using a Fluid 100 block. This is a cotton rag watercolor paper, and I'm just kind of doing stop and go lines. I'm doing a light mark, then applying more pressure, and then doing a light mark. Now, something else I want to point out is the ink flow in these is not necessarily that great. You're going to get a lot of dry brushing. To me, that's actually a good thing because it adds a lot more texture and it makes it feel more gritty and a little bit more real than if I were just getting a completely perfect straight line every time. And if you slow down, you can get a stronger line. It's really when I bear down to get that super thick line that we have problems with ink flow. So from left to right, we have Seiboku, we have Mizu Asagi, we have Chitose Midori, we have, I have to look that one up, sorry about that. Oh, that's our Sumi Iro, no, it's our Hiwara Iro, and then we're going to have our Sumi Iro. So we have our gray color, we have our blue-green color, we have our green color, we have our red color, and then we're going to have our black. And here's a comparison between the ink color itself and the ink on the bottom of each pen. And the pens themselves come in a fairly sturdy corrugated or ribbed plastic case. It's streamlined, so what I like about this is it's designed for reusability. It's small enough that it would fit in my pen case without a problem, and it protects your pens, but it's also inexpensive enough that if you wanted to toss it, I don't think you'd feel bad tossing it. So I'm going to let these inks dry for 24 hours so they can cure and bond to the paper, and then we're going to go ahead and get testing. This review was made possible thanks to the generosity of Joseph Coco, my super patron, and Joseph would like me to remind you guys that he's currently helping me create a mailing list to promote 7-inch Kara Volume 2. So if you want to support the work I do, you can click and sign up down through the link below. So it's been 24 hours, our inks are now cured, as you can see by the handy text right there, and we're ready to get swatching. So for this test, I'm going to use a Copic marker. It's in a color that is light enough that we can see if we get any smearing, but dark enough that we can actually see where it went down. And we're doing the Copic marker first, and then we're going to use a watercolor brush full of just clean water to apply some water as well. I'm using a fairly soft brush, but it's a brush I use all the time. It's the Silver Black Velvet brush. And you guys will be able to see it a little bit closer up soon, but there was no smudging, no smearing, no reactivation, no movement. These brush pens are Copic and waterproof, which is really nice because that really increases what I can use these for and when I can use these. Next, we're going to field test these. So I'm going to use Hiwata Iro to ink this little red pen or red pencil sketch here. And this will give us a chance to see how this handles in a real world situation. And then I'm going to watercolor on top of it. So if you take your time while inking, you're not going to see too many stops and starts in your line work. If you ink quickly, that's when you start to get the dry brush, which means you can actually control the lines you're getting. Something else I really like about this is we're able to get really, really nice fine lines like on her nose, and then with a little bit of pressure, we're able to get chunkier lines like in her hair. The pen itself is smaller than a lot of the other brush pens I own. It's more like a Minso brush, like a very, very small sumi brush in terms of size, than it is like a pen. And honestly, that's probably the demographic they're going for. The smaller size does make it a little bit more difficult for me to hold, but it's actually small enough that I could slip one of those gummy grips on it, which would make it much more comfortable in the hand. So if I was going to be using these all the time, I would definitely get 5 gummy grips and put them on them, and that would greatly increase the comfort level without significantly changing how they handle. Hawaii Iro is a really nice color for inking people. It's a warm, rich color that complements skin tones quite well. But I'm going to have to come up with some art to test some of our other colors like Chitose Midori or Mizuasagi or Seiboku. I don't feel like I really need to test out the black ink though. You guys have seen black ink before. I tend to be a bit heavy-handed, so if I wanted to really get fine lines with this, I'd really have to practice and build up to that, but it is possible, and I'm sure someone who's a little bit lighter-handed than I am would have no trouble doing so. I apologize for the fuzzy focus here. Fortunately, we're just kind of nitpicking and adding final small details like lines to the hair. So even though it's fuzzy and a little bit annoying to watch, it's not like you guys have missed anything super important. So now that I've finished inking, I'm going to let this cure overnight and then we're going to watercolor with it. So I pulled out my Da Vinci Artist Color set. Perhaps my Gensai style watercolors would have been a better match, but I really like the Da Vinci watercolors. So something I'm looking for when I'm watercoloring over this would be the colors muddying my line art too much. That is a tendency that happens with colors that have a lot of optical brighteners or colors that are opaque or semi-opaque. And if that's not a flaw in the Akashiya, it's really more of a flaw in the watercolor, but it would mean that I would need to re-ink the piece for good color clarity. I'm not really painting anyone in particular. I just wanted to create something that would demonstrate the inking properties quite well and would be large enough that I felt comfortable watercoloring on it. This is a 4 by 6 inch fluid watercolor pad, so it's the same pad we used for the initial test. So it's cotton rag paper, cold press, but it has a fairly smooth finish. And I've talked about this pad and I've talked about the Da Vinci paints in other blog posts and other videos, so I'll link those down in the description below. I do not feel like creating a watercolor tutorial with this one. It's pretty straightforward and it's really more of a demonstration of how these pens look with watercolor on top of them. So if you're interested in watercolor tutorials, I have a few large playlists that should help satisfy that need. I have my quick and easy watercolors playlist, which I'll link in the cards and down in the description below. My watercolor basics playlist, which is a little bit more advanced, and I'm going to link that as well. And then I have my watercolor playlist where I show you guys how I paint watercolor comics. So I'm pretty satisfied with how the Hiwata Iro stands up to the watercolor on top of it. I do think if you were painting with like gouache or really opaque watercolor or watercolor with a lot of optical brighteners, you would want to re-ink your piece or use my lineless watercolor technique and then ink it afterwards. But I think it forms a really nice complement. It's dark enough that it doesn't look weird or overly transparent, but it's still light enough that it's not adding a whole lot of black contrast, and it adds a nice warmth to the skin. So I'm really excited to play around with these Akashiya Sai Thin Line brush pens. I've already got another project planned for these, and I really love using colored inks with my art, so I have a feeling I'm going to be using these pretty frequently. I'll pop a link down in the description below to where you can find them in the US, and if you use my links, that helps support the work I do here on this channel. Another way you can help support reviews like this one is to join me on Patreon at patreon.com/natosoup. I hope you guys were inspired by this and maybe you found your new favorite art supply. So hopefully I'll see you guys again really soon. Bye guys!